Hi everyone, David Aragona and Craig Milkowski here, taking a look at one of the stakes on Saturday at Fairgrounds, that Louisiana Derby Day undercard. This is race 10, the Muniz Memorial Classic, a grade 2 event going the about distance of 1.125 miles on the turf course. And note that the Fairgrounds turf rails have been moved in a little bit for this weekend from 34 feet to 28 feet. So horses will have slightly more ground to deal with on that Fairgrounds turf course that has been restricted for most of this meet, and that allows us to increase the maximum field size from 8 to 10, and we do have a full-sized field of 10 runners signed on for this Muniz Classic, Craig, and it's a pretty good field for a grade 2 event. We've got some runners who have earned some pretty high Timeform US speed figures in recent starts, including the morning line favorite, the number 1 Atone, who is coming off that victory in the grade 1 Pegasus World Cup turf.
Yeah, this is a very strong field for this race. I'm glad they moved the rails. Just a quick note on that for people that don't know. They use the same timing beams no matter where the rail is. That's why it's always going to be an about distance at the fairgrounds unless there is no temp rail or the rail setting is 0. So just something for those that didn't know it. But yeah, this is a good, strong race. And we've seen grade 1s that weren't this strong.
Yeah, really nice field signed on here. We've got last year's winner of this race, 2 Emmys in the mix, Spooky Channel, who's won some nice races in the past. We're going to get to all of these contenders in just a little bit, but before we do that, let's take a look at some of the features in Timeform US. And first up is the pace projector. No characterization here of a fast pace or favoring front runners, but you do see the number 1 Atone shown on the early lead. Atone can certainly run that way, although he's not a one-dimensional front runner. He's got more versatility than that, which he showed last time. Craig, I would imagine that the number 6-2 Emmys is a little more likely to go to the lead. He's a horse that uses those front-running tactics more often than Atone does.
I would agree. I think Atone being shown on the front kind of shows how murky the pace situation really is. Atone is proven pretty versatile, particularly last time when he dropped well off the pace winning the Pegasus. And even 2 Emmys, he's done fine on the lead. He's also done fine tracking the lead, but he's the one more likely to be in the front. And if Atone does get aggressive from the rail, he's perfectly capable of sitting just to his outside.
Let's also take a look at the Timeform US finish projector. This one of the new features in Timeform US, which you can check out on Timeform US PPs on your mobile device, but also now Timeform US on your desktop. Just clicking on that tab right next to Formulator and Classic PPs in your DRF past performances. And Craig, this is a visual representation of the power picks that people might be familiar with from the Classic version of Timeform US. And I think this is a good illustration of the greater depth of information that we're providing here. Instead of just giving you the first, second, and third picks of 1, 6, and 5, we're showing that the finish projector actually has a hard time separating these top 3 finishers.
I believe this is the first time we've had one this close, so I'm glad it popped up here because these top 3 on the speed figures are all very closely rated, and you can actually see that they're basically 1, 1A, and 1X here as far as who's the top pick. They're very close together.
Let's move into some of these top contenders, and we're going to begin with the horse that is predicted to be the narrow winner of this race on that Timeform US finish projector, the number 1 Atone. And let's check out his most recent victory when he achieved that grade 1 score in the Pegasus World Cup turf. Craig, he got a great trip and ride this day from Irad Ortiz, a horse, like I said, who had shown speed in the past, but other horses wanted to go forward here. Irad was able to save ground, sitting in behind runners, tipped him out at the top of the stretch like he often so expertly does, and this horse was able to mow down the classy Ivar to get the job done. That was the best performance of his career, and he's probably going to be a short price off that grade 1 victory.
It was a race I remember. I think we did a video preview for it. If not, we certainly covered it on the Timeform US forecast. And it was one I really liked Atone because I thought he was going to steal the race on the front end. And sometimes you get a little lucky. He showed versatility where he had come from off the pace before, but his best races have been on the lead. I think from the inside draw, it's going to be a little more vital that he uses that inside early speed early. He draws inside, and I think that is a problem at fairgrounds. We haven't really touched on it yet. It's a racetrack where, with that rail being constantly removed pretty far out, it's one where the races have a generally have an outside flow to them, and horses coming from off the pace and wide in the track do best. So Atone's really going to have to work out a trip here. He gets a different rider in Luis Saez, who's certainly capable, but I just think this is a lot tougher spot given his draw.
Yeah, I've watched some races, and the turf course is definitely playing a little bit fairer than it was earlier in the meet, but it's definitely not your typical turf course where saving ground is such a huge advantage like it is at some other tracks. Let's take a look at a stat for trainer Mike Maker, who, of course, has Atone in this race. And I just wanted to pull this up because you think of Mike Maker as shipping horses all over the country to win stakes on the turf, just having a lot of turf success in general. Over the past 5 years at fairgrounds on the turf, the numbers are actually much poorer than you might expect from the Mike Baker barn.
Yeah, this one surprised me because I know he does run at the fairgrounds pretty regularly, and we know how well he does on turf, particularly in these stakes races. So I definitely think this is something you need to take into account.
Let's move on to one of Atone's main rivals in this Muniz Classic, and that is the number 6 2 Emmys. He won the local prep for this race, the Grade 3 Fairgrounds, about a month ago, and he was a pretty dominant winner of that race. Carved out some legitimate fractions, just always looked like he was in command of that field, and drew away on the stretch, running down the center of that Fairgrounds turf course, beating a few rivals that he'll meet once again here. Like I mentioned at the top, Craig, he is the defending champion in this race. The distance, obviously, no question for him. We know he loves the fairgrounds. I'm expecting 2 Emmys to show up with a good effort.
Right. I think he's actually the horse to beat. I think he's the best horse in the field. Maybe he was a little short coming off that layoff. Maybe the track got to him the first time when Gentle Soul was actually a little bit wider than him and was able to wear him down. But I really liked the race last time, have no knocks on him. I think that 125 speed figure was a career top for him, which is something that's surprising for a 7-year-old gelding, but certainly a great sign. And I expect another good effort from him.
Yeah, the horse who upset 2 Emmys 2 back in the Colonel E.R. Bradley is Gentle Soul, and we'll take a look at his past performances. Craig, he ran really well that day and actually validated that performance by coming back with that second in the fairgrounds last time. The problem is, as you mentioned, 2 Emmys just took a big step forward, second off the layoff, and Gentle Soul simply didn't improve quite as much. He also got a great trip when he beat 2 Emmys 2 back, like you were saying. 2 Emmys was in the center of the course, and Gentle Soul was coming down that stand side rail, which is really where you want it to be back in January. So maybe he took advantage of circumstances a little bit that day. Just feels like one that might be in a little bit over his head here, given the strength of rivals that he's meeting in this Grade 2 event.
I would agree. That gap is pretty big between 2 Emmys and Gentle Soul last time. 4 lengths on the turf is probably more like 6.5 on the dirt. I mean, it's just a dominant performance, and it seems like it would take a lot and maybe some racing luck for him to turn the tables back on 2 Emmys.
Gentle Soul just edged out English Tavern, who's drawn right to his outside in the starting gate for this Muniz. Last time out in the fairgrounds, English Tavern was third in that race. But like we just said with Gentle Soul, they were both beaten a long way by 2 Emmys, and English Tavern hadn't even been as effective in the stakes prior to this. The Colonel E.R. Bradley, even before that, he was beaten by another rival we're going to get to in a little bit, Spooky Channel. So English Tavern just feels like one that's really going to have to do quite a bit better if he's even going to hit the trifecta here.
Yeah, he's run some decent speed figures in the past. We can see when he was second to Spooky Channel 3 back that he ran a big number. It just feels like he would be more of an underneath player in vertical bets than he would be a win candidate.
Then we've got Tiz the Bomb. He finished much farther back, 6th place in that fairgrounds last time. It was his first start off a long layoff, his first start since the summer at Saratoga last year, so maybe he needed that race for fitness. But Craig, this horse just, aside from his Jeff Ruby Stakes victory on the synthetic, he's never really run a speed figure that suggests he's a contender in this race. And he's just one of these horses that has a reputation that I think isn't commensurate with his actual ability to win a race like this.
I would agree. His reputation was enhanced when he ran second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but for some reason they put him on the Derby Trail. Didn't really look like a dirt horse. Then he got the points to get in the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Didn't run much in the Derby, but more important for me is his return to turf has just been a bit underwhelming. His speed figures are nowhere near these. And even though he's listed at 10-1 on the morning line, just given the action he always seems to get at the windows outside of Kentucky Derby Day, it feels like he's going to be an underlay.
He is getting Lasix for the first time, and that's often a good move for trainer Ken McPeak, but he would need to take a big step forward first-time Lasix if he was going to beat this field. Let's take a look at a couple of horses coming out of a Grade 3 stakes event at Sam Houston last time out, the John B. Connolly. This one was going the 1.5-mile distance, so both horses that we're highlighting here, Spooky Channel and Another Mystery, are going to be cutting back significantly in distance by 3 furlongs. Craig, Another Mystery outran his odds here, almost getting the job done. He was the 3-1 second choice, I believe. Spooky Channel, maybe a little bit disappointing to some, the fact that he lost this race as the even money favorite, finishing third there, just failing to get past Another Mystery at the very end. But given the trip he got, I thought Spooky Channel actually ran pretty well. He was wide around all 3 turns, getting an uncovered trip, never really able to slot in behind horses and relax. So I thought it was a pretty solid effort from Spooky Channel, and he showed that he handles a shorter distance over this fairgrounds course with that big victory 2-back.
Yeah, I think he's a strong contender in here. You mentioned the trip last time. Certainly not ideal, particularly at the extended distance of 1.5 miles, and especially so when you add in that it was a soft turf course. So just not the best way around. I thought he ran fine, and I'd also throw in the factor that even though I'm not a guy who's a big bounce proponent, this is the one situation where I am, where a horse runs a big race off a long layoff, which he did at the fairgrounds with that 124 speed figure. I actually expected him to make a little regression from there, which he did. And now I'm looking for another bounce back here from him. And he's had about 2 months off. He should be in top form and ready to go. So I'm expecting a big race from him as well.
Yeah, Spooky Channel's a really cool horse, an 8-year-old gelding who's 12 for 27 on the turf in his career, had a year-long gap, actually 14 months away from the races prior to that return at the Fairgrounds 2-back, but it seems like he's come back as good as ever at the age of 8, so he's another one that I'm expecting to run well in this Grade 2 event on Saturday. The other horse coming out of that Connolly is Another Mystery, Craig, and he's one where I have a few more questions about the shorter distance, because it really does feel like he's done his best work over those marathon trips, 1.5 miles really being his best distance. So the cut back to 9 furlongs, a little bit of a question mark for me, but he did run well last time.
Yeah, this is one where if you just look at finish positions, his shorter races, they look okay and look like maybe it wouldn't be a problem. But when you take into consideration the speed figures, they seem to regress even when he runs well. He just seems like a horse who appreciates the longer distances a lot more.
There are a few long shots in this race. We're not going to mention the ones drawn all the way on the outside, but I do want to give a quick mention to the number 2, Rising Empire. This is a horse who has only tried the turf twice in his career in his last 2 starts at Fairgrounds, and I think they've both represented subtle improvements. I really liked the late run that he put in 2-back. Arguably, he was with the flow of the way the turf course was playing at that time, but he was finishing really powerfully down the center of the course. And then last time out, I thought he did well to reel in the leader that day. Again, was on his wrong lead finishing, but was building up a lot of momentum through the wire, handled the 9 furlongs that day. Rising Empire is getting a real class test as he steps up against some established Grade 2 and Grade 1 level turf horses, but he's going to be a big price, Craig, going out for capable connections, and he's one that I do think has some upside coming into this event.
I think he's by far the best of the long shot chances in here. The speed figures are a little light, as you say, but he's likely raced on turf, and both of his turf efforts have been good. He improved last time, another step forward, and he could be there. He'll need to probably work out a trip, get off that inside rail, but given his running style, it shouldn't be too big of a problem. He is shown pretty close up on the pace projector. I know something we talked about on the forecast. He's shown speed, so it's not like he's a stone closer who needs to come from way out of it. He has decent tactical speed and just needs to work out a trip, and I think he'll be finishing strong. It's just a matter of how much work he has left to do.
Well, let's throw up our picks for this Muniz Memorial Classic. And Craig and I are both somewhat against that morning line favorite, the number 1, Atone, Craig. I think we both acknowledge that Atone is a win candidate in this race. I just don't think the value is going to be there. He's coming off 2 consecutive perfect trip victories, and I'm not convinced, as are you, that he's going to get that same perfect trip breaking from the rail at Fairgrounds on Saturday. So we're pretty much in agreement with the top 2 picks, 2 Emmys and Spooky Channel. We just put them in different orders. I think both of these horses are going to run well, and I would imagine they're both going to be value in this race if Atone takes the kind of play that we expect him to.
Yeah, I was almost torn on which one to put on the top. I went with 2 Emmys because I think he's the best horse in the race. He's not going to be the favorite, but I certainly have no arguments with Spooky Channel. He's going to certainly not be the favorite either, and be a bigger price than 2 Emmys, and I'll be using them both in vertical plays.
Yeah, I put Spooky Channel on top, and I've got that long shot in there for third, the number 2, Rising Empire. If he's a big price, he's one that I definitely want to include in my wagers. So that's a look at the Muniz Memorial Classic on Saturday at Fairgrounds. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.